Hi, you guys, it's Tonya Gibbs, and today I want to share with you a masculine mixed media layout that I created of my son, Brighton Gibbs. He graduated last year, and these were part of his senior portrait package with the kids going back to school, and everyone's receiving photographs right now for school pictures. I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to share some ways that you can scrapbook those 5x7 photos. So I'm starting out with a piece of white cardstock. This is standard cardstock that you buy in bulk at most box stores, and I'm going to use my Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft gelatos. This is the boysenberry. It's in the blues mixed and match set, and I'm just adding it to the top around the perimeter of this paper, and I'm spritzing it with water so it'll start to run, and that's going to give it a really nice interesting look. And notice that I'm just working that pigment in and around with my finger at this point. I'm just moistening it up with a little bit of water and rubbing around the edges of the layout. I wanted my edges to be darker than the inside of my layout. And my son's school colors were royal blue and red, so those are going to be the primary colors that are used today. Notice that I'm spritzing water, adding the gelato, and then using my finger to rub that in. And I'm going to just continue on around. So now I've taken some of the gelatos and that same gelato, I've added a little to my craft mat there and put a little of the gel medium in it. I'm mixing it up, and then just keep adding some of that gelato until you get the color that you're after. And then I'm going to use the Tim Holtz Stars stencil and stencil on some stars in the upper left hand corner and then around where I think my photo mat's going to be. So in my scrap pile, I found this piece of tissue paper that is from Tim Holtz. I had used it on a previous project, and I do like to use those up as fast as I can on the next project. So I'm taking some gel medium, and I'm going to add pieces and parts of that tissue paper that I've ripped up around my layout. So I'm going to start in the upper left-hand corner here with the stars. The tissue paper has a lot of script writing that kind of has that historical look to it. It also has some things in a foreign language, which in high school we have to learn a foreign language. And then it also has some music paper. So what teenager doesn't have music blaring 24/7, right? So to make my tissue paper not look so just placed on my layout, I'm going to add a few more of those stars directly with the boysenberry. These are going to be a little more intense than the ones I added with the gel medium, but that's okay because I'm going to come back and gel medium over the top of everything in just a few minutes. But before I do, I have some of the deep cherry gelato that I've pushed off to the side, added some water to it, and now I'm using the bottom of the bottle to just add some circular splats all around. This is going to bring in my red element that I want and help to anchor some of these things on the background. When I was adding my tissue paper, I went ahead and added gel medium all over the background of this paper. So now what I'm doing is taking that gelato and just scribbling over the top. But since it's now a prep surface, I can go in with my baby wipe and spread this around, and it just really helps to blend that gelato really well. And I'm going to avoid that center section there between or where my photo mat's going to be. There's no need in wasting the pigment there. So let's start with our embellishment pieces. These are numbers from Tim Holtz. This is his grunge board set, and what I'm doing is I'm going to take my Nougat Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen number 178 and color up all of these. Make sure you get inside all of the ridges and around the borders, and then once it's dry, I'm going to come back with the deep scarlet red Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen number 219 and add some red to the top of that. These are going to make these numbers look like leather. And then I also found these stars in my stash these are from Heidi Swapp, and they have a resist on them. So I'm going to use that boysenberry to color up all of the stars that I'm planning to use. This will help to reinforce my all-star theme that I'm going for with the stars in the background that are painted. These will give it a more three-dimensional level. Then I just sealed over the top of them with some gel medium so that the gelato doesn't run after in case I add some wet elements to my layout later. So this is the schoolhouse stencil from Tim Holtz. I'm adding some of my Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft whip spackle. I felt like my background was sort of bland and flat, so this gives it a little bit of texture, but it keeps it very subtle. So I love the alphabet in the back because it keeps with my school theme as well. Notice I'm rotating my stencil, moving it around so that not all the letters are bumping right up to each other and you don't see all of the letters. So it gives it a really nice grunge. Bef Before moving on to the next step, I did go wash that stencil really well so it wouldn't ruin it. Now let's start with our photo mats. This is a file folder from Seven Gypsies, and I'm taking that Nougat Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen and scribbling it on my craft mat, adding some water to it, and it becomes like a watercolor distress. And then I'm using a sponge to just sponge that around the areas. I'm not only going to focus on the edges here because this is a photo mat, so there are going to be lots of layers, and I don't want to waste all that pigment. This is a ticket that I got from Tim Holtz. It's a story, and I'm going to crumple it up so it looks like it's been in the backpack. So the idea here for all of these photo layer elements are going to be, I want them to look like they came out of my son's backpack. And if you have teenage boys, even elementary aged boys, you know everything they do is crumpled up, thrown in the bottom of the bag. My son's a huge history buff, so I found this page from the Life of Abraham Lincoln that I'm going to add to this embellishment cluster. I'm also including some grid paper, some notebook paper, and then a couple of sheets of just standard cardstock to bring my red and blue values forward. I also have pulled out another ticket that I've ripped in half, and I've also added another journaling piece that is numbered 1 through 10. It has a little star on it, so it repeats my star theme. I think that's from Seven Gypsies as well, and that's where my journaling is going to be housed. So I'm going to get all of my layers in order here, and then I'm going to add some gel medium between each layer to glue them down. This is going to give me the flexibility to move them around until I'm satisfied with their placement. Now I'm going to take that tag that says story and place it right above my embellishment area. And I did notice that I did manage to cover up a lot of these stars that I put on earlier, but no worries, I'll come back and add them later. So now I'm going to go back with my tiny attacher and staple some staples around. Also, that's another theme with high school. You typically see stapled papers everywhere in their backpack, so that's keeping with that theme as well. And this is a fun way to create a layout without themed paper. If you look, most of the things that I'm using here are things that you would see me use in my mixed media stash. So now it's time to add a little bit of stamping, and I have this grunge set from Tim Holtz that has some numbers in different sizes and they're kind of smeared. So I'm using my Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen for my ink. This is the black 199, and I'm going to add that onto the stamp and then use it as my stamping ink. And of course, the more you stamp it, the lighter it becomes, so you get a really nice depth of field. One of my stars had a hole in the center of it, and I could see all the layers below, and it was distracting. So I'm going to add this glitter paper behind it just to mask that area. Now I've pulled out a piece of scrap foam board. I'm adding some score tape to that, and I'm going to be using that on the back of my photo to elevate it slightly above the rest of the embellishment clusters. If you prefer a flat layout, then you could skip that step and glue your photo straight down. Now when I glued it down, because I used the score tape, it stuck immediately, and I noticed that I covered up my blue mat, but that's okay. You can still see it peekabooing out around the edges of my photo when you tilt the layout to the side, and there is so much blue going on in the background that it's really hardly missed. So once I find placement for all of these other stars, I like to keep them in the rule of thirds. I've got 3 down in the bottom around the photo. Then up at the top, I decided to add one of these, that half of a ticket that I had torn from the below. I'm going to stick my title to the layout up in that upper corner, so that gives a little bit of weight to that area as well. So here are my numbers that we colored earlier, and now I'm adding some gel medium to them, and then I decided to staple them in the center, and I'm absolutely loving the look of the staple. With this, since it is a layout of my son and it's school themed, I thought handwriting would be the appropriate way to add my titles. So on that ticket, I added class of, and then of course my numbers are the 2015. Now I've pulled out my Essentials pen, and this is the brush tip that's in the Essentials pen, and I'm writing history on that file tab. And then on the ticket that says story, I'm writing senior story. And then I'm also going to take that brush pen and just kind of run around the edges of my photograph to frame out that edge. But I really love the look of this ink on the edge of the photo. It just kind of takes something that was very clean and making it grungy to accent the look in the layout. I found a few more stars on my desk, so I went ahead and added those to the embellishment cluster up on the left. I'm just applying a little gel medium to them to get them to stick. And then I decided, I saw where I had covered up some of the stars that I had put down with the boysenberry, so I'm going to go back and add those in now that my layers are complete and I know what space I have available. And I'm notorious for covering up things I do in the background when I do them first. I should probably start building my embellishment cluster and my frame and then use it as a guide for putting down my things. But anyway, so now I've decided to add a little bit more doodling on that ticket that was poking out from the side. I put prom because you know you always have a prom ticket on your senior year. And then I've gone in and added some journaling to the left. These are the top 10 things about Brighton in his senior year, like who his girlfriend was, what type of car he drove, that kind of stuff, what his favorite music was, who his best friend was. And then I wrote his name up on the left-hand corner of the notebook paper because I like the look of that because, you know, when you're in school, you always write your name at the top of the paper. And then down in the bottom right, I wrote down who his Indian mother was. His senior year, our football team has, they call them Indian moms, which are ladies who really spoil them that work inside the school system. So I've also taken that Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen Nougat 178 and gone around all of the edges of the layout, just right at the edge. I didn't want it to be too grungy, but you know, I do like it a little darker around the edges, especially when there's so much grunge going on and all the other elements had that dark color around them. I thought that it added something to the edge of this layout as well. So once all my journaling is in place, and like I said, I really wanted this to look like handwriting from. So I'm not being very clean with it. I'm not trying to be very clean because boys' handwritings are typically not clean. But I wrote Go Indians at the bottom, which that's our school mascot, and then his jersey number. Now I'm taking my Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen Cold Gray 3, number 212, and I'm adding a little bit of shadows around some of my embellishment pieces. Then I found a paper clip laying on my desk, and then I found this old piece of metal that I've had for ages that says MVP, so I hung it from the paper clip and clipped it there on that piece of red. And you'll see me come back and wipe off that number 4 since the bottom surface is prepped with gel medium. As long as this India ink from the Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen hasn't set yet, you can totally take a baby wipe and wipe it away if it's not right. So it just was a little too it wasn't neat enough for me, so I just cleaned it off, and then I ended up going back and writing it again after that area had dried. Now I've taken that Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen on my mat there, added some water to it, and I'm just going to add some black splatters all around and making sure I cover up my photo. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me through this process video today. I hope I've given you some ideas on ways to use your just things you have laying around in your craft room for mixed media to build a layout that's masculine. Again, I had a lot of fun doing this, and here are some close-up photos so you can really see all of the grungy effects, and it fits the personality of my son so well. I absolutely love this. So don't forget to go check out my blog post that has a list of all the supplies that were used to this and some detailed photos so you can really get a good eye on it. Thank you again for stopping in today. If you enjoyed this production, leave me a thumbs up, comment, and don't forget to share it with a friend.